It's a mentality that they have, and I'm very excited to see them because they're an underdog story. But that underdog story ends here with the 49ers because you have a team on the other side. You have the 49ers who essentially are coached the same exact way. Kyle Shanahan has a mentality of running the ball, playing
Defense, run
physical.
game.
Yeah, so it's going to be a fun physical matchup. It's going to, in my opinion, this is closer to old school football that we've seen in a very long time. Teams who love to play defense and run the ball. Like that doesn't get better. Like as a football fan, that's what you love: defensive football and running the ball.
So, and you anticipate that the 49ers will, do you think that Christian McCaffrey will be the first running back to get over 70 yards on the Detroit Lions? Or do you think that it'll just be, do you think he doesn't quite make that threshold?
I think CMC hits 90 plus yards on them, and I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think it's a game where you ask. So if you look at the Detroit Lions, right, they're terrible in the pass game. Now, what does that
Yeah.
do as a team? It
But
opens
they're
up your run,
number one against the run.
but it also opens your run, right? So a lot of teams they don't try to run the ball because they're so effective passing the ball. And that's not going to be Kyle's mo. Kyle's going to understand that I need to keep control of the ball. They have an explosive offense. You got to run the ball. Well, you also got to throw the ball against this kind of defense. And I think that actually opens things up for the entire offense because you're going to have their linebackers trying to drop and get into their zones. You're going to have their corners who are trying to get out and cover. Brandon Ayuk, they like to play press man over there. So you're definitely going to have a game where Kyle could potentially have Christian McCaffrey go for 90 plus yards in this kind of game. And I know it kind of sounds crazy because no one really rushes for over 70 on the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
But you can run the ball on a team like this because you're not going to go away from the run, and your pass game is going to open up your run game, and it's going to open up some lanes for Christian McCaffrey, who is the best running back in the NFL.
Definitely the best running back in the NFL. Really quick, I did want to address Alberto, who kind of said that they're injuring players. I think he's talking about there's a cornerback for the Lions that is, I think it was against the Vikings, and then what was the game that they just recently played? He's accidentally caused 2 ACL tears, but that I don't think is intentional at all. I think he's been like, cornerbacks are taught to hit low, like you can't hit them in the chest and high, and I don't think it's fair to talk about people purposely injuring players.
So I think he has a valid point. So
do you think so? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because even Matthew Stafford came out after he hit Tyler Higbee in the knee, and then the next game, I believe it was
the tight end for the
might have been Otten.
Vikings. It was the tight end for the
it was
Vikings,
Vikings.
and then it was Matthew Stafford.
And
or
so
not Matthew Stafford, Rams.
So Matthew Stafford even said he's asking you on film, you're dirty, right? But I get that it looks dirty. Like I get that perspective. But this is what the NFL is calling for. Like if we are being 100% honest, you can't hit anyone high, or at least in the chest, without it being
where are you supposed to hit them?
So essentially the NFL, and the NFL has essentially said, you know what, target below that, the waist or below. If I'm targeting the waist, I'm gonna end up hitting the knee. It is what it is. Now, the NFL has literally banned you either hitting from the shoulders up on a receiver, or even if you hit them in the chest and their head rocks back and your helmet is at the chest, it's called for a helmet to helmet hit. So essentially the NFL, this is a product of the NFL, him hitting this way. If you ask any player, all players are going to say, dude, hit me high. But at the same time, is if I hit you high, one, I'm probably knocking you out. You're getting a concussion. But two, I'm getting a personal foul. But if I hit you low and I make a big hit, I'm not getting flagged, and I'm still making the right play. So I think it does look dirty. It does look intentional from what I've seen, but it's also it's a product of the NFL, and I don't blame Kirby Joseph for those hits. Now it sucks because every player in the NFL would say, "Don't hit my knees." Every player, every 100% times. So it is just honestly it really is just a product of the NFL.
Can I ask you? This is like we're walking back away from dirty players, but more just I want to focus on like physicality, because we kind of talked about I think what Dan Campbell, the best thing that he did for the Lions was like giving them a standard and like a standard that they need to play to, giving them some sort of morale and um like cohesive standard, I guess. I don't know. I
Like a
totally my
brotherhood,
brain.
like the camaraderie or something like that, like the brotherhood that they have?
What I was gonna say is like the Chargers right now getting Jim Harbaugh. I think they are trying to do the same thing. Not necessarily that it has to be physicality,
Oh,
but
that
that
rah-rah.
certain teams don't have any purpose. Like everything is too scattered. You need to have one goal. You need to have like one way that your team flows. Whether it's physicality, whether it's you're more run. I think the Rams have this, but I think it's actually not physicality. I think it's a little bit more. It was getting flashy plays. It was their scheme, their offensive passing game. I think has been a really big thing for them. Same thing with the Chiefs. Like I think that these teams have offensive philosophies and team philosophies. And when you're thinking about team building and how the 49ers have built their team, you have to give John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan a ton of credit because I think the reason they've been able to kind of find these stars in the later rounds is they're targeting a certain type of player when they're looking, and they're looking for a player that is physical, that plays all out, that plays with effort. When we think of Brandon Ayuk and why he was put in the doghouse, it was because he wasn't going 110% in practice. Dre Greenlaw just went out and was talking about Jawan Jennings, who we were just talking about, and said that he won't like. I guess in practice, you're kind of when you're gonna collide with each other, you're supposed to kind of like pull back and not go 110%. And Jennings can't do it. And Dre Greenlaw said like, yeah, like at first it used to annoy me when he first got on the team, but then you see him game after game on film, and Kyle Shannon's always pointing it out, and you just start to realize like this is how he plays. Like he doesn't know how to play any single other way, and I think that isn't by accident. I think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan together have formulated this is our standard of play. These are the type of people we're gonna like go and get. And I think Dan Campbell was able to do something similar with the Lions by just instilling a kind of like we're gonna bite people's kneecaps, and if you're not on that level, like you're gonna be out of this organization, and we're gonna bring people in that have that mentality, and we're gonna coach with that sort of like physicality, and we're gonna hold that as our number one standard organizationally. And I think that that's why they've had such a turnaround in kind of a shorter amount of time, and something that you can be kind of proud of when you're thinking of both those teams. The Lions, who are obviously a younger team, but I would consider them physical. Now they do have they have a incredible run game, but they also have when you think of the Lions, do you think of more of their run game or their pass game? I think just offensively they
Offensively, I think more of their run game because I think they have one of the
Gibbs.
better backfields in the NFL with
Yeah.
Montgomery and Gibbs.
That makes sense. Do you think that the 49ers or the Lions are the more physical team? Or do you think that's to be determined? We're going to figure that out on Sunday.
This is a hell of a question, and you worded it very well in the terms of how Dan Campbell built his team, like building the team on confidence, building it on the grit, the grind, understanding that you have to have a mentality to be on his team. And if you don't, you're not built to be a lion. The same thing with Kyle. Kyle and John had a
Yeah.
mentality. And so it's a great point. But I look at it this way, right? The Niners offensively, what does Kyle want to do? Oppose his will. He wants to run the ball and he wants to be extremely physical, right? And that's something that has been known for Kyle Shanahan's offenses forever. Like that's Kyle's MO is running the ball and then going to play action and eating defenses alive because he's able to run the ball on you effectively. Now, and that's why he can't. That's why he's not known for come from behind wins because his offense is built off of the run. Now, when you look at the Detroit Lions, their offenses are similar, right? Like even if you look at their are both receivers, like both receiving cores, their receiving core, Amon Ra, is extremely physical. Debo, Brandon Ayuk, Jennings, they're physical. The tight ends are very physical in the run game. Um, and if you look at the Detroit Lions, they love to run the ball. They love to be physical. But then when you look at the defenses, right? The Detroit Lions defense wants to become physical, but they don't have the players for that yet. And you look at the Niners, they have the players,
Okay,
guys
that
like
makes
Dre
sense.
Greenlaw,
Yeah.
guys like Fred Warner, Denomina Lenore, they have the talent, they have the pieces to play that physical style. So when you look at both teams, they're very physical teams, but the Niners have the personnel to do it on the defensive side of the ball versus Dan Campbell's Lions defense does not have the personnel yet. So when you're looking at both of them, they want to play that physical
And that's kind
style,
of why you
but
say, like,
Detroit can't.
that makes
Was it?
sense, that makes sense. That's kind of why you say, like, they could be a year away and stuff like that, is the mentality is a huge part of turning around an organization, but then you also have to get the personnel. That's kind of like, I remember after the Ravens game, I forget which guy it was. It was a defensive lineman, and he came out and was like, "Oh, like, we gave the league the blueprint for stopping Brock Purdy." And everyone's kind of critique of that was, even if you did, like, no one else has your personnel, so no one can, like, copy your formula. Like, you are such a talented team and you have the exact right, like, you can execute that formula. So even if the Lions maybe understand the strategy to compete with the 49ers, they might not have the, like, literal talent on personnel yet.
And and then that's exactly perfect way to say it, right? Because like the Ravens have the personnel to do certain things against the 49ers defenses, which is going to make it a lot harder. Detroit does not have that. Like their secondary isn't the level of um, Ravens. Their linebackers aren't the level of the Ravens. Even their defensive line isn't at that level. So it's a lot harder to do those kind of things. I mean, you could call those kind of plays, but if you don't have the personnel to do certain things, you can't do that. And I think I don't know, Ishai or
Yeah,
Isaiah.
yeah, yeah.
Great comment about Kyle. I actually have that comment up because I wanted to talk about that Campbell, how he explained Kyle's offense. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the whole quote. So
Okay.
he goes up and says he's like he just this is Dan Campbell explains Kyle Shanahan's offense. He goes, he just does an unbelievable job of setting you up. He's going to make you stop it, and if you don't stop it, you keep getting it. And then once you feel like you're about to stop it, he counters. He's just always been great about that and the way he sets it up. They have a mentality about the way they do it, and you can't do what they do without the mentality either. It's physical. There's nothing easy about what they do. So even Dan Campbell knows, like, and he's one of the guys who tried. To be honest, if all head coaches had a fight, like if we had like all head coaches Royal Rumble in fight, Dan Campbell might win that battle. Like with all coaches, like that's the kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
physicality like Dan Campbell likes to approach. So the fact that he's saying Kyle's offense is physical and Kyle's bringing that mentality, it speaks volumes in terms of Kyle Shanahan's offense. So that's why I said like they're two very physical teams, but at the end of the day, the Detroit Lions don't have what it takes on their defensive side of the ball yet to be physical. Their offensive side of the ball, their O line is ridiculous. Their O line is super, super good. And that's why they're physical on offense. They could run the damn ball and they're very effective. And that's why they brought in David Montgomery. Jameer Gibbs is that he's a very physical back too, even though he's that
Yeah.
speed gadget, he's
And
gonna try to run you over.
people thought they, like, reached for him, and he's been excellent for them. He basically won them the game on the in that 4th quarter against Tampa.
I think he's probably a top 5 to 10 running back in the NFL already, and he's a rookie. So
Yeah.
speaks volumes on how they developed him and brought him along.
I completely agree. Now, did you hear Kyle Shanahan questioned on Dan Campbell's aggressiveness and whether or not he was gonna be more aggressive this game?
I did not. I know that was going to be asked to Kyle. I mean, that was something that has been discussed, but I'm definitely willing to hear what you have to say or what he said because I know you have it somewhere.
I don't know if I have it written down, but because it was from like 2 days ago, when they first just started discussing the matchup. But he said both that he respected Dan Campbell's aggressiveness in decision making, but that he makes his 4th down decision makings on a play by play basis, and that he feels like as an offense they make the right call there. Also, he had a pretty snarky response when discussing his going into halftime decision making against the Packers,
Not surprised.
which I think was also like within that line of questioning. Do you think that Kyle Shanahan should be more aggressive in this game against the Lions, and that Dan Campbell's willingness to could provide the Lions with more opportunities, um, if there is that disparity where Kyle plays more? Because I think Kyle can kind of in the Packers game, I felt like he was playing to not lose. Like when asked what he was doing against the Packers and if he would do it again differently, he was like, "They didn't score." It's like, you also did not
Neither did you.
score. What? What do you
So
mean? It's much better if you walk down the field and get a touchdown. And like, also, aren't you supposed to trust your defense? Like, why would you rather run out the clock so they don't have the opportunity to score than trust that you can score? And then if they get the ball back, that your defense can stop them?
so I hope Kyle's aggressive situationally, right? Like going into half, be a fucking aggressive. Like, what are we doing? Go score the damn ball. Put it in the end zone.
For some
Come
reason,
away
the
with the
way you just
touchdown.
said be aggressive like that brought
Like
the cheerleader at me, and I have like a there's like a
be
be aggressive,
aggressive.
be
Be
aggressive, and like everything within my body was like trying to do that, and so I just needed to get a little bit of it out right there. Sorry.
Um, but I think like he needs to like situationally, like I don't want Kyle to go in and be like, you know what, I'm gonna coach just as aggressive as Dan Campbell on 4th and 3 at our own on their 45 or their you know what, we're going for it. Don't do that. Be true to yourself, because that's how you've gotten here. You've won a lot of games doing that. But I also want Kyle Shanahan to going into the half, right? Like or situationally, your defense is playing great, be a little more aggressive. If you're holding them and your defense is playing super great, like be a little more aggressive. Take the advantage of your defense playing so well. But I also think Kyle Shanahan's going to be a little aggressive in a way that people are not expecting. Kyle's going to be aggressive in the passing game. He's going to be aggressive offensively, but not necessarily going for it on 4th down or doing certain things. Like I want Kyle to go down and score in at half, but I also want Kyle to understand that let Dan Campbell do what he does because that's Dan Campbell's game. That's the way they win games. You have a defense that if their defense capitalizes, for example, 4th down. I thought it was a huge mistake by Matt LaFleur going for it on 4th down before when they got stopped. I thought in the playoffs in those kind of situations you got to get the points. If you don't get that 1st down, you screw yourself. The Niners ended up going down and scoring a touchdown. Momentum completely shifted after that point. So for me, I think Kyle needs to be aggressive, but a certain way. Like be aggressive, calling plays for your offense, like the attack downfield and use the weakness of the Detroit Lions defense, which is their passing game, to be aggressive. But don't be going for it on 4th down just because you want to put your cojones on the table and match them up with Dan Campbell's because that's not gonna end. It's not gonna end well. That's not your style of playing.
Um, Niner Bang just put in a comment that's going to transition us to a different topic in a second. But and just reading that made my eyes, explode in the back of my head. But really quickly, Stovey 4 times 4 ing. Don't worry, I feel like I probably butchered the way to say that, but said, I think Kyle wanted to score, but wasn't getting any yards. So he did address this in a press conference. He said that there was one play where it was purposeful. It was called for Brandon Ayuk, but the protection broke down. So Brock Purdy threw it to Christian McCaffrey, who was a check down, and they didn't get any yards. But then he said after that he would not change anything and that he had no problem with running the clock out because the Packers didn't score. So he was totally okay with going
Just,
for the field goal and not scoring,
I
which
mean, it makes sense
I
to a
think is
certain extent.
problematic.
Like if, for example, if it's Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes on the other side, like you don't want to give them the ball back, but it's like it's
I
Jordan
don't feel
Love.
this. Yeah, I know what you mean about Tom Brady. That makes sense. It's
So like
Jordan Love.
it's kind of those quarterbacks like you don't want to give them the ball back to end the half like with a minute or 30 seconds left and 3 timeouts because Green Bay did have 3 timeouts. And I think that may have played a bigger factor into Kyle's decision, be knowing that Green Bay had 3 timeouts and knowing they were
Kyle
getting
Shanahan also had 3 timeouts though.
he did also have 3 timeouts, which
Like he
I
wasted there was like only a minute left, but he had like 2 minutes of actual game time left if he were to use his timeouts. And if you score a touchdown, like have faith that your defense can stop them. Even
I
if
can
they
see
end up
that.
walking down the field and getting a field goal, you just scored a touchdown. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
me, that's coaching more scared than confident. And I think what you're saying against Josh Allen, against Brady, that could make sense. You're like 10-point favorites over the Packers. You shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like you should be coaching don't let them know you're scared because now they're like, oh, this team is also like, why are you playing? Why are you